Thank you very much, and I'm really delighted to be able to moderate today's afternoon session on medtech and device companies and the challenges and chances we have with those. Let me briefly introduce my panelists today. This is André Hofmann to my left, who is CEO of biosaxony Management GmbH. Then we have Mateusz Sagan, Chief Operating Officer of SDS Optics from Poland. We have Steve to the further left from Switzerland, from MUVON Therapeutics. And we have Sebastian Alexander in the middle between the gentlemen, CEO of VivoSensMedical out of Leipzig. A few words about myself before we go into our panel. My name is Cornelia Jahnel. I'm heading the investor relations of biosaxony Management, and I think it's a great pleasure to have the opportunity to not only speak about the cluster today and how we grow medtech companies, but actually have three of the teams we are helping with and we that are our partners with us today. So really go into a more hands-on discussion, what we think the landscape gives us today and what really are the challenges we are facing. Having said that, I'm really helping to get more and more capital into the region of central Germany. That's where we are mainly located, out of Leipzig in Germany. And I think we have made our first appearance last year in September at the conference. Thanks for having us again. And we would like to work on that and grow that out. I would like to use the first couple minutes to really have a longer introduction of the gentlemen, so you really know what companies they are representing, starting with André, who has been running the cluster for more than 10 years now and knows exactly what it means to grow a life science stroke medtech cluster in Germany. Would you enlighten us a little bit of what you have faced the last 10 years?
Yeah, sure. So, my name is André Hofmann. I've been CEO of biosaxony for almost 11 years, not more than 11 years, actually. I have a background in biomaterials. I studied biotechnology and medical technology a long time ago. Spent a couple of years in the research area, and then moved on to public administration, basically acting as an support for the life science community in the region towards the city's government back then, and then moved on to biosaxony. Back then, biosaxony was more or less a marketing organization for the state of Saxony, with not that much to tell, actually. We changed that a lot in the last few years. What we did about that, we can highlight a little bit later.
Yeah, so Mateusz Sagan from Poland, SDS Optic. Very pleasure to see all of you in the hall. SDS Optic is a very disruptive medical technology company. What we have done is we merged photonics with molecular biology and novel chemistry and biomedical engineering in a single tiny microprobe platform technology. So we just, by essence, took the fiber optics technology and we bring them to the clinics. The first application we currently are in the clinics is for the HER2-positive breast cancer diagnostics. With this technology, there is an opportunity not to use and not to perform any tissue biopsies and perform the so-called immunoassays examination in real time, in vivo, in a living tissue, which is going to be very safe and very efficient both for patients and for the physicians, so they could potentially introduce the treatment, specifically the monoclonal antibodies treatment or immune therapeutics treatment straight away. We are based in Poland. Currently, we have roughly around 40 people, mostly scientists from different fields, as a very multidisciplinary team. We raised to date almost 25 million euros to develop this technology and bring it to clinics, and hopefully in 2 years from now we will bring it to the market with all the approvals and the clinical validation. We have been co-funded also by the European Commission with Horizon 2020. Recently we got funding from the European Investment Bank with up to 10 million euros. And we are also proud members of the Medical Forge Biosaxony Acceleration Program, where we also put this technology in front of the German clinics, German physicians, challenging us, and we challenge them also how this potentially could be used in a clinical practice in a longer perspective, because this technology has a tremendous opportunity also to be scaled up into different cancer biomarkers, infectious diseases, cancer treatment monitoring, ocular disorders, also several types of those, like wet AMD, for example. So very happy to be here, and I'm responsible at SDS Optic basically for everything except science and technology. So please don't ask me difficult technological questions, if I may. Business economics by background. So that's what we do. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Matt, for your introduction of SDS. And moving on to MUVON first, before we go back to Sebastian.
No? Okay, good. Perfect. So, hello, everyone. Thank you also to biosaxony for the invitation and for the possibility to be here. So I'm Steve Kappenthuler, Chief Business Officer and the co-founder of MUVON Therapeutics. We're a spin-off from the University of Zurich, and we are developing a tissue engineering therapy for the regeneration of skeletal muscle tissue based on the use of the patient's own muscle precursor cells. So our goal is to basically establish the first commercially viable regenerative therapy for the treatment of common yet highly debilitating diseases. And initially, we are focusing on the treatment of stress urinary incontinence in women. So this is a disease that's basically represented by the involuntary loss of urine during exercising, coughing, sneezing, or laughing. So when abdominal pressure increases, and can be caused mainly by a damaged sphincter muscle, so the one that holds the bladder closed. And the main cause of this is usually childbirth, but also natural process of aging. And what we basically do here is that we take a small muscle biopsy from the leg of the patients. We isolate the muscle precursor cells, multiply them, and inject them back into the urinary sphincter muscle of the patient, where the cells then begin to differentiate, form muscle fibers, connect with the tissue, and regenerate the sphincter muscle so that it can perform its function again. Like this, we want to offer an alternative to the currently available treatments, which all involve the implantation of synthetic medical devices. So we want to provide a long-term, safe, and effective treatment to these patients. And why are we here also? So during the development of our therapy, basically we figured out that what we are doing, so the mode of action is that we are creating microtissues in vivo. So at the place where you inject the cells, there is a certain maximum volume where the cells can act and actually regenerate that muscle tissue, so that innervation is guaranteed and the muscle really functions. And as the sphincter muscle is a small horseshoe-shaped muscle, we need to inject around that sphincter muscle to enable full regeneration of that muscle. And for that, we ended up developing a medical device that allows a quick and easy injection for the physicians. And so for the further development of this device, we also got connected to the Medical Forge in Leipzig, and they're also supporting us on that. So we are currently 17 people, completed a phase 1 clinical trial with 9 patients at the University Hospital in Zurich in 2021, and are currently running our phase 2 trial, where we expect interim data by end of the year and completion of the trial by middle of 2025.
Thank you very much, Steve. Sebastian.
Thank you for the opportunity to being here. Sebastian Alexander, CEO and founder of VivoSensMedical GmbH, but also a member of the board of biosaxony, the network, and responsible in the board for the Medtech development. VivoSensMedical, we founded the company 12 years ago as a spin-off of Women's Health Hospital in Leipzig, together with my father-in-law, Professor Henry Alexander, who was one of the pioneers in the IVF and reproductive medicine field. He was the director of the Reproductive Medicine Center in Leipzig, and he was confronted daily with the insufficiency of the current methods and products on the market to track the female or diagnose the female cycle, because we just have 1-point measurements which are medical not adequate to track the complexity of the female cycle. And the second reason is we have still the model of 28-14, so female cycle is 28 days, ovulation right in the middle. but this is in reality not true. Maximum 1/3 of all female are in line with that model, which means in the opposite, that currently 2/3 of all females are not diagnosed according to their individual biology. And we came up with the idea and developed the product using a continuous measured core body temperature in combination with a mobile app and a web-based software with our own algorithm. And in a result, we have a medical accurate daily fertility diagnostics and cycle health diagnostics for the female, medical proven for mainly 2 addressable markets currently for us. One is with that we have a costly reduction alternative for the IVF. So statistically, the possibility to get pregnant with ovula ring is higher than in an IVF with 95% cost reduction. And of course, the other side of the coin is the growing demand of natural hormone-free contraception. So, yep.
Thank you very much for the first introductory round. And I think we're going to go into further details, looking at Leipzig often enough still not being recognized as a life science hub and a life science center. And I think we are a bit behind the curve, but fast and quick catching up and growing more international in that too. And if you look at the European landscape of med companies or medtech companies having more than 34,000 in Europe, and Germany being kind of the biggest player, and that's still the SMEs make up to 95% with less than 50 employees per company. And I think that's what we also face where in our area in central Germany. Nonetheless, it has a really, really high growth rate still also in patent application. And I think what I would like to ask André first is developing a life science cluster in central Germany with kind of a large history in Medtech going back to quite some decades. And who knows us knows also that we are very close to Jena, which is kind of the cradle also of Optic industries. What were the biggest challenges so far, and what do you think made you successful overcoming them?
Well, as you mentioned, there's a lot of SMEs in the area and not so many big players, unfortunately. But on the other hand, this is also an advantage. So looking at other cluster organizations relying on, let's say, Siemens or B. Braun or all the other big medtech companies, what they do, I often see this focused on the needs of these big players, not so much on the SMEs. We have a strictly imprint coming from the SMEs and try to basically service them as much as possible to help them getting across the obstacles that they find in their way. And so, in the end, a couple of years ago, a company of our cluster turned to us and asked for help in terms of MDRs. And we have heard a lot of complaints about MDR today. So we can't change the system itself, but still we can make it as smooth as possible for the companies to work with. And the company, in the end, it was Sebastian sitting here today. He turned to us asking for support and basically also came up with the idea, why don't we basically concentrate all the MDR, all the regulatory affairs know-how in one entity, being biosaxony. So he's CEO of a company, and in most of the small and medium-scale enterprises, we see that the CEO is also the person responsible for all regulatory affairs, occupying part of their time, like 50%, which is a waste of time because he should focus on other topics like company development, business development, and so on. So we designed this idea to have a centralized regulatory unit catering to all the companies that we work with. And in the end, this regulatory unit is now effective since more than 1 year, almost 2. We have seen about a dozen of customers, some of them coming back regularly, some of them staying with us the whole time, and giving the CEOs the opportunity to focus on what their really job is. So this is what we try to come up with solutions, or how we try to do this. And Medical Forge was basically the same idea behind that. Most of the companies in our region turned to us asking for help. not just in regulatory affairs, but also reimbursement issues in the German healthcare market, or how to implement their technologies in the healthcare system. And we could either do this step by step, one company after the other, or we design a platform to help them come across these obstacles like in a school class. And this is what we did 3 years ago. So the first batch, basically it was designed to support our local companies, but in the end we learned that we also could offer the service to companies from abroad. So the first batch was divided equally between German companies and international companies. The second batch, where we have MUVON and also SDS, there's 8 spots in each batch, and there's just one German company participating in the program, because also international companies like to go through this program and get the support. And what we've done here, not just in terms of regulatory affairs, but also in terms of clinical cooperation. I will never forget when MUVON sat on the table for the first time, we were asking them, what do you need? And they said, well, clinical feedback would be nice, user workshops. So we kind of knew that we need some gynecologists on the table. And what else do you need? Well, dead bodies would be nice. I was kind of shocked in that moment. In the end, it took us 3 days, since we do have the access to the clinics. We have a network of 150 clinics German-wide, with especially tight relations to those local clinics, University Clinic in Leipzig and St. George Hospital. So we can organize stuff. The only thing is we need to get the impulse, and we need to get the idea on how we can help and support. And from my point of view, this is our task as a cluster organization, to help them. And the last thing just to add here is also the point where we all are here for raising money. So the newest hobby that we have is setting up a venture capital fund. But this is something where you could give us a little bit more detail than I can here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, André, for taking us on the journey in biosaxony. And I have joined biosaxony a year ago, and I can tell you there has not been one day where we don't take on new tasks and try to find solutions for our cluster members and for the teams in the Medical Forge, reaching out much more global than we used to. And yes, we are raising our first time venture capital fund. And I think my colleague will explore more on that in 2 days' time on a panel. But we are on the journey on fundraising. We have been BaFin regulated now and accredited. So whoever wants to talk to me about that, I'm happy to do that after the panel. But I really would like to concentrate here on the Medtech companies and taking up the journey with the buddies. Steve, one more question. Like, what did you learn? I mean, what was something that we were able to help you with, maybe some others couldn't before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so first of all, exactly to go back to that whole development. So as I mentioned, the injection device or medical device that we have developed over the years was done with the physicians at the University Hospital of Zurich, where originally the phase 1 was also Horizon 2020 funded, and with the same physicians and support from the V Zurich that is currently supporting us, their medical device robotics platform. We further developed that into a prototype, but it was always the same physicians that gave their inputs on what could be improved, what could be done better. And with the Medical Forge, we had the opportunity then to really, the first time, go out of our home turf to a different country, to different physicians. What was also interesting, we worked with the urology, and in Leipzig there, the CAD lab, as we call it, was done with urologists and gynecologists, and there is a complete difference as to how they work in the OR. So it was clear that whichever physician, the incontinence operations are done by different types of physicians in different countries. So you may have slightly different requirements for the tool that you're doing depending on where you go. And of course, really the first time giving it into someone's hands that wasn't a part of the development but new to the device and everything done, and just seeing, are the instructions for use clear? What do you see as the main issue, and so on and so forth. So those were really insights that we couldn't get from the physicians that we had already been in contact with over the past couple of years and that actually were part of the initial development of the device.
Thanks, Steve. And turning on to Matt, you have quite a journey already behind you since 2013, so 10 years of development. And what were your greatest challenge turning points, and what do you think did bring the 1 year now with us in Leipzig to you?
Yeah, so of course, with those kind of disruptive technologies, the most important is funding, because even the best possible technologies, they can fail when they simply run out of money. So we were very confident, and we were very happy to have both business angels, seed funds, VC funds, had a public funding in Poland as well as from the European Commission as a part of also Horizon 2020, as Steve said. Now the EIB, we also took a decision a couple of years ago that we wish to still keep independency, so still to be independent very much in terms of making all the key decisions. So roughly 3 years ago, the board of directors, together with the key shareholders, I'm also one of the shareholders, we've made a decision to go public. So we are currently listed at the Warsaw Stock Exchange. There is always two sides of the coins. There are pluses and minuses being a publicly listed company, of course. But the biggest plus we clearly see is really we are very much independent. So we do not have any large VC funds sitting behind us and saying what we should do with the investment contract for 150 pages with all the possible clauses financial world has ever founded. The biggest challenge for us was with this kind of disruptive technology. So when we go to the clinics and we say we have something we have a technology which is some kind of alternative for the traditional biopsies and pathologists. So immediately everyone is like, all right, so what do you wish to just kind of replace pathologists and biopsy? So we always say absolutely not. But we all know what is the challenge with pathologists currently in Europe and in the US. We have a huge lack of pathologists. The average age of pathologists is very highly increasing. So in 20 years from now, we will have a huge issue with waiting times for the pathology examination. So having Medical Forge and biosaxony, this relationship for us was very important also to learn a different perspective from the physicians, from hospitals, from the breast cancer units. We've met in Leipzig, for example, because it looks a little bit different than in Poland or in Scandinavia where we had a meeting. For example, in Poland, the biopsies are being done by surgeons, oncologists. In Germany, it's done by radiologists. So it's a different department. It's completely elsewhere. So there is a different approach, because from the Polish perspective, surgeon oncologist is also the one who is possibly treating the patient. So he has a different perspective about the diagnostics process. Radiologists in Germany or in the US, for example, they have only a simple job, maybe not as simple, but they have a job to do, which is collect the tissue biopsy and send it for the lab, and it's done. They are gone. They will never see this patient again, very possibly. So it was a different approach. It was a completely different angle to see in Germany, thanks to biosaxony and Medical Forge. We put this now into clinical trials. We just end up phase 1 study, which was very positive, and we are now getting into phase 2 study. But we decided to put it on hold, also thanks to the experience we've learned in Germany. We changed a little bit. We adjust a little bit the study protocol. We put some additional examinations we wish to make. We put some additional information we want to gain from the patient perspective, doing also some additional liquid biopsies, some additional tests to collect much more data, to put the data from our device versus as many other data points as possible, not only the traditional biopsy histopathology test, but also ELISA, and also NGS testing, the gene sequencing testing, blood testing, and etc., just to see and just to bring some much more data on the table from the phase 2 study. And it would possibly never happen if we didn't have this chance to see the German hospitals, because they simply work in a little bit different aspect.
Thank you for exploring that. And maybe 2 words about the accelerator. It's a 1-year program. Applications are open until November this year for the next batch. It's a 200,000 governmental funded program, which the teams receive the money through the services of biosaxony, providing Medical Forge as an accelerator, open for 8 teams per year. We just have identified the next batch with 8 teams last December. They will onboard in April. And we are really looking forward again to very diverse in topics as well as in geography teams to work with for an entire year. But having said that, I really would like to turn to Sebastian, who is not part of the Forge, but he has really met the challenges of growing a medtech company out of Leipzig. Like, I know that funding has always been an issue, especially in our region of central Germany. Would you like to explore a bit more on your journey?
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm too old for the Forge. I would love to have the Forge 12 years ago. So, first, something positive. So, a lot of things changed, especially also in Leipzig. But still, funding is a big issue, and it's from my point of view, it's also bigger than regulatory affairs. So, especially in Germany, and of course, especially also in Eastern Germany. So still funding and risk capital is a big issue to get on it. And I think I would figure out 2 major points. The first is that still we have especially a lack in funding for, I would call it the market phase. So we have a wonderful or approvable, a good financial situation for the transition from the university into a company. Then we have a lot of things for the startup phase. And then after the valley of death, it becomes once again better in the growth phase. But when it comes into really market entry with innovative products in the medtech area, this is still an issue because from my point of view, it's really hard to get someone who is getting the risk to invest into marketing. But in the end, it doesn't matter how good your technology is in the end. The game is playing on the market, and so you need the investment. And the second thing is, from a medtech perspective, everybody is talking about that the future is patient oriented. So, but if the future is patient oriented, then we have to develop patient oriented medtech devices. And then we are talking about B2C, but especially in the B2C area, it's much more harder than in the B2B area to address the needed funding for the way for growth.
Thank you exploring on that and taking that up, André. I know that you always like to grow not just the cluster, but especially also the services of biosaxony along the TRL line. I would like to ask you to explore a bit more for our audience. What are the building blocks on your agenda? And what's kind of the next big thing that you're working on?
Well, talking about building blocks, there's quite a few. Again, we try to make life for small startup companies in the life science area as easy as possible. So what we've always also seen through Medical Forge is we do have lab capacities. There's wet labs, there's a 3D printing lab, there's electronics labs, and so on. So this is what companies like to use, especially in the early phases, not so much in the Medical Forge, but also companies locally. So one of the things we are working on at the moment is setting up a co-working lab in a larger area to offer outfitted labs to companies at a very reasonable small price, actually, basically to reduce the ramp-up costs for startups straight from the scratch. So this is something that we see as beneficial for those startups and also for investors behind them, since if the infrastructure isn't that expensive, you can do the math yourself. So this is the next step we're working on at the moment. We're also working on early stage programs to support startups straight after getting funded. So we have an agreement with a local support agency offering 300,000 euro for a startup that we can select. We can do this 3 times a year, so 3 companies can benefit from that each year. So that's like an early stage investment into a company that actually doesn't really exist at the moment. So this is also aimed to support the very early phases of a startup company. And since we're talking about ecosystems, we already mentioned the venture capital fund. Stay tuned for the second day of the biotech focused sessions here. We're also thinking about going abroad with the services that we offer. So whatever we do is not just focused on the area of Leipzig or the area of Saxony where we come from. All those platforms that we have designed, that we are building up, can be implemented basically in every other life science focused ecosystem. So we are talking to different or other cities in Germany, but also abroad internationally, to set up like subsidiaries there, which shall also help the companies in later stages with internationalization. So if you have been part of the Medical Forge program once, you just can go through the similar stages or similar programs in Europe, in US, in other places in the world as well. So that's the next few steps in the next 2 days, I guess.
Let me ask you a question while we are all exploring. Who of you has ever been in Leipzig?
Wow.
That is very impressive. Thank you very much. And let me take that as an opportunity in between to say you are more than welcome to come again. And we would love to invite you to biosaxony or BioCity and show you more of the cluster there. And I hope that we kind of are coming out of our underdog position and be seen in the international radar much more. Having said that, I would really like to ask Matt, with all the challenges and the great also achievements you have received so far, I know that COVID hit you quite hard, as many companies. What did you make out of it? And having said that, maybe also a second question to follow right there. What is ahead of you for the next 3 years, and what are the big things on your agenda right now?
Yeah, so of course, as probably for everyone in this room and out of this room, COVID was a big challenge in terms of clinical trials, in terms of supply chain, consumables, price increases, basically on a daily basis. But we came out of COVID much stronger, and we learned how to work remotely, how to really move the pieces going. So it was a challenging time, but we end up COVID with becoming a publicly listed company. It was a funny story because we were the first company going public in 2022. It was mid of March, 2 weeks after the Russia invaded Ukraine. So everybody was saying you are absolutely crazy and stupid to go public 2 weeks after the war just ended, and we just ended COVID, and then the war just came in, and you are going public. So it was challenging. So at the end of the day, we end up with price cap being tripled over the last 24 months. So and one public offering along the way. So very successful one. So seems like even just shortly after COVID and 2 weeks after the war collapsed, basically, if the story is good, you can go public and you can basically sell it, if we can call it. So 3 years ahead, basically for us, it's the most important challenge is of course the clinical trials. We validate very disruptive technology. No one has ever done this kind of stuff with fiber optics, getting in vivo into the woman's breast and measuring cancer biomarkers in real time without any tissue biopsy. So we are collecting tons of data. So one measurement, just to give an example, one measurement which takes roughly 5 minutes, it's around 25,000 data points we need to analyze. This is a light wave frequency, which is just like changes within milliseconds. So it is a big challenge for us because we have no any scientific papers, no any guidelines how to do it. No one has ever done it. So we are just like a little bit blind kids doing that. So we've seen this in the phase 1 study. We took some key learnings and we will implement them in a stage 1, in a stage 2 study. So that's, I think, the most important challenge for us. Of course, regulatory is a challenge because we had a talk with the FDA, we had a talk with the local regulators in Poland because of the MDR now it's not under the responsibility of the European Medical Agency anymore. They needed to get some time to understand who we are and what is the technology behind, because FDA says is in vitro diagnostic. The European regulatory says, no, it's not in vitro, it's in vivo. So we have some kind of tough discussion between those two. So it seems like 510K procedure in the FDA doesn't apply because we are not a biopsy needle, but we are also not an in vitro typical traditional immunohistochemistry test. So I think this regulatory challenge is something we face very heavily. And of course, funding. I think for all of those technologies, funding is crucial. So we are happy to have European Investment Bank on board with up to 10 million. It's a venture debt, so we will have to give it back one day, hopefully from the partnering and M&A process we plan. We also have already the M&A advisory firm from New York City on board, helping us to get into the corporate environment. So hopefully this will also happen to get some first partnering agreement within the next 2 or 3 years.
Thank you very much, and good luck on all of those kind of pathways that you are moving on. Steve, I know you have a very heavy year in front of you as well, with going through phase 2 and going through funding. Like, I know you have a CEO with you, very strong team behind you. How is 2024 look like for you?
Well, let's say better than 2023, definitely. I would say so. Last year we had some issues which we overcame. Also managed to get in some let's say survival funding from the existing investors to really push us to the point where we will be able to get the clinical data. And I mean, that is just how it is at the moment with many companies, that those that survive and can provide the data will move forward. So that is what we're working at. But what I also see is that, so what we are developing is also, as Matt just said, highly innovative in a field where it's never been done before. So we're talking about tissue engineering therapies, ATMPs, where the regulations are just developing from the EMA and also the FDA, although the FDA is just brought out guidances end of the year, which make our clinical development paths a lot more straightforward than it was just a couple of months ago. So that is really great, but we're also applying this to the field of women's health and also a disease with stress urinary incontinence where there hasn't been much innovation in the past, I would say, 20 years. So also on the clinical trial side, there haven't been any new endpoints developed or precise endpoints developed, as all of these studies in the past have been focused on medical devices. So there is one pharmaceutical that I believe that it's duloxetine. It's basically used to treat severe depression. Some as a side use, off-label use, could be used for stress urinary incontinence, but was retracted or was not approved by the FDA and retracted in Europe mainly because of increased suicide cases, which is not what you want to have as a treatment for a non-deadly but highly debilitating disease. So in this field, a lot of things we are doing is new, but we see with all the accelerators developing, the new guidance is coming out on the ATMP side, but also the accelerators developing in the women's health field, and the push for more funding, the more open discussion about topics, be that menopause, endometriosis, fertility, stress urinary incontinence, other type of incontinence. This whole discussion is becoming more open, and more people know about it and begin to realize the size of the unmet need, and through that also the market. So these discussions, I feel, also discussions we have as investors or potential partners are different if you don't have to spend the first 20 minutes explaining why there's an unmet need and that it affects 50% of the population and might be important.
Thank you very much. And Sebastian, If I take your company, you have been in the market for quite a while. I know you're still a way ahead, but you also have a very close eye on the entire region, being located in Leipzig and knowing what the ecosystem can do for you and what it can't. If you had a wish list, what would be the main 3 items on it?
First, funding, supporting. No, I mean we can override it. I mean, André and I discussed this it's a couple of times, and we are doing things in that is joining forces, because we have a lot of small companies, startups, SMEs, and as André said, I mean we are in Saxonia. We do not have the big players, so the majority, maybe 100%. Let's take it like this: are small companies, and for them developing solutions where we can join forces. One thing for funding, because it costs so much time for me as a CEO to organize the process, which is then lacking focus on market. Same thing as Andrew said, regulatory affairs. This was also the idea behind it. So like a company, Medtech company like Bay Brown, for instance, they have a 10 people regulatory affairs team. So why not putting 10 or 5 or whatever SMEs together, joining the forces, and then we have the same regulatory affairs team like B. Brown and can accelerate the processes for us in the same way. So that's somehow a little bit the vision and also the wish list, because when we are just fighting on our own level, on our own thing, then things becoming more worse, and in the end, maybe we will fail on the market. We have to address or putting the companies in the situation that they can focus on the market, focus on their products, and all the other things. We can help them not just with consultation, really help them in an operative way.
And I would like to take that up because I know you want to approach it too. I know that André is currently also working on a next strategy for life science for the state of Saxony. What is on your list there, and what are the topics that need to be addressed profoundly?
Well, one of the just to add to what Sebastian just said, so the regulatory affairs unit, this is really the blueprint of how we wanted to work here. So we don't just give advice to the companies; we are working with the companies. So we do write technical documentations together with them. We do take the position of quality management in the companies. We do take the position of the person responsible for regulatory compliance if needed and if wanted. So going really deep into this just to lower the burden upon the shoulders of the SMEs. So for the wish list and or what we are working on at the moment, there's a lack of lab capacity in general in all parts of Europe as far as we've seen. So we are working on this very extensively as a sideshow, I have to admit, since we on the one hand we focus on technical aspects, on the other hand we also focus on the provision of infrastructure. So at the moment there's no lab space available almost all over Germany. Also in the UK and other places of Europe, it's the same thing. So we are currently building 60,000 square meters of lab and office space for life science companies, dedicated towards their needs or designed for their needs. And we always also will take the responsibility to support and take care of all the companies and tenants in these facilities. So this is probably the most important thing. But also, as I said, the collaboration with the clinics. This is also something that we look at very closely. So we had heard the needs of the companies, that they need the access to specialists in the clinics, which is often hard for them to get. So we have a direct contact to them. We can easily organize that. Doing so, we also saw a lot of interesting technologies coming out of the clinics. So there's a lot of doctors around that have smart, small innovations that they want to use, but they can't get it to the market because they are not entrepreneurs. They don't want to become entrepreneurs. This is what we are focusing on in the next level, helping them setting up entities or doing this together with them on developing those programs. So there's a lot of ideas on the table. We try to get this straight lined. Well, the next few years will be pretty interesting again, I guess.
I don't doubt that at all. And let me wrap that up. I think you have seen and heard 3 great examples what challenges but also what chances lie in building a medtech company and using the support of such a cluster stroke accelerator to overcome the need of, as we all know, regulatory and funding being the most pressing issues here. Taking the last 5 minutes, we would like to welcome questions from your side. So please throw them at us and we are happy to answer.